Hey guys, JV here with another edition of my Mass Effect Andromeda Pathfinder Guide series. This time we're looking at how to use augmentations, which can transform Ryder's weapons and armor into many different super powerful and crazy variants. We'll explore what augmentations are, how to use them, and other things to keep in mind. And don't worry, this video is spoiler free if you're avoiding that sort of thing. Before we start, just a quick reminder that you'll find Andromeda tips and tricks guides, multiplayer, and my streamed playthrough live every single day during launch week, including tonight, here on this channel. So if any of that content interests you, be sure and subscribe. First off, what are augmentations? You can think of them as a special mod, but it's in the form of a blueprint that permanently modifies a piece of gear, a weapon, or a piece of armor. But it's important to note that augmentations are not like weapon and armor mods that can be swapped in and out. Augmentations can only be used during the development process. And as we know, research and development are only for crafting gear. And so that means augmentations are only for crafted gear. You're not going to find a cool weapon out in the world that you can actually equip and then slap an augmentation on it. You can't just do it like that. You have to craft the piece and then add the augmentation. We're going to look at that process in this video, but just keep in mind that augmentations are not the same as traditional mods. In order to use and apply augmentations, you'll need a research center where you can research and develop them. So you'll find these on the Tempest and Outposts and other places. You'll know where they are once you actually get into the game. And so first off, we're going to go into the research side of things and look at augmentations. Research is divided into 3 different types of technology, but under each type you have the augmentations folder where you can go through and look at a ton of different types of augmentations that you can research. Looking under the Milky Way tab, you'll immediately see that blueprints for augmentations and all blueprints have rarity tiers. That dictates the research data cost that you'll need to invest in order to research that augmentation. So as we know, you unlock blueprints with research data. You find that by scanning things out in the world, and that kind of accrues over time. Keep in mind, research data is a currency. So once you research something, you'll lose those points. So, make sure and research something that you're actually interested in. So obviously some of the more specialized augmentations are going to be more expensive. They're going to be those ultra rare N7 versions that are 200 research points versus 50 with the rare ones. For the purposes of this video, we're going to look at electrical conduits, which is an ultra rare augmentation from the Milky Way Tech tab. So for this one, as you can tell, it says if you successfully complete the research, you can easily scan and recognize the augmentation out in the environment, and then that will be available for you in developing new items. So that's just letting you know that once you research this thing, you have 1 copy of this augmentation. If you want more, you have to go out into the world and find them via vendors or scanning things. Before we move on, I just want to point out that some of these augmentations, not all of them, are multi-use. So for example, with this one, if I craft it and then I use it in the crafting developing process for a gun, I'll get a certain effect, but if I use it for a chest, I'll get another effect. That's the same with the electrical conduits. It has a separate effect for guns and a separate effect for chests. So depending on where you drop it, which item you apply it to, it'll have a different effect. You'll find even more specialized ones like this one, which is non-shotgun weapons versus shotgun weapons. They have separate little nuances depending on what kind of item you apply them to. Let's go ahead and research electrical conduits to see what that looks like. So it's going to cost 200 of my 480 research data for the Milky Way Tech, and this is what you get once you've researched. A little reminder that researching gives you 1 copy of that augmentation, but if you want more, you're gonna have to find them out in the field. I'm not sure if that means these augmentations will appear at vendors or not, or if it literally means you have to scan something out in the world to get one. But once I do confirm that, once I've got more playtime, I will update you guys in the comments below. Now we're switching over to the development side of things, where you're able to actually apply that augmentation and use it on an item. Side note here, keep in mind, if you buy blueprints from vendors, you can just skip the research phase that we just went over since you already have the blueprint. Remember that research is all about getting that blueprint. If you've already found it out in the world through scanning, or you found it from a vendor, then you don't need to research it. You can skip straight to this phase. We're going to take the Avenger Assault Rifle 2 and apply the electrical conduits augmentation to it. So as you can tell, once you select something, you can see at the bottom it says augmentations optional, and I have 2 slots that I can drop an augmentation into. If you're at the very beginning of the game and you don't have an item that has this option at the bottom, that's because it's not above tier 2 or rank 2. You need at least a rank 2 item in order to apply augmentations. As you can tell with this Avenger Assault Rifle 1, I have no option to add augmentations because it's not at least tier 2. As you get higher rank blueprints, you'll be able to add more augmentations, so keep that in mind. mind. All right, so we're going to go ahead and drop the electrical conduits into the augmentation slot on the Avenger 2. And just showing you here, this is how the interface works. If you have something that you can apply, it'll be listed right there. And we do have an additional slot. I don't have anything I can actually drop into it, so you don't have to occupy both slots. You can only do one if you want to. With any crafted item, you can rename it at this stage, so you can call this electrical conduits or whatever you wish. So of course it's going to show up with a blue outline designating it as a crafted item, so you don't get confused with other things in your inventory. At this point, you'll need to find a loadout station in order to actually equip the item that you just crafted. And this is something I didn't realize when I was making the video until it hit me, like, oh, I can do this. Once you craft a weapon with an augmentation, you can still take advantage of the mod slots on that item. Because of that, you can see me moving the mods from my previous weapon to my new crafted weapon, and I'm doubling up on the augmentation and the mods available, and that works for any item that you craft. So I thought that was really cool. Finally, this is what the electrical conduits mod looks like in action. It's really cool. It's almost like a Sith Lord looking effect, like a chain lightning. It doesn't chain between enemies as far as I could tell, but it definitely deals more damage. So we're going to cut to some gameplay in just a second of me actually using it on enemies. With special augmentations like the electrical conduits, you can't add multiple of this type to the same weapon or item. So for example, with this one, I couldn't go back and add both the electrical conduits augmentation and the grenade launcher augmentation. It just wouldn't work. That doesn't make sense. There are little mix and match limitations on these augmentations, but for the most part, they make sense. So if something's not going to work with something else, it won't let you, and you'll know. Because I know someone's going to ask, as far as I could tell in my experience, this augmentation doesn't prime or detonate any combos. This one won't replace overload or energy drain in terms of, completing those power combos. It just doesn't have that effect. It doesn't have a lingering effect. It's just going to shock them for as long as you're holding down the trigger. That would seem pretty ridiculous, almost like adding another power to your 3 that you can use at a time. And I don't think any other augmentations have a similar effect to this one. So if you're wondering, I don't believe it does that. Additional things to keep in mind: augmentations are permanent with the item that you applied them to, meaning that you can't swap them in and out like mods. They are a permanent mod, if you will, a special type of mod, and you can't just go to a research and development station and undo that decision. However, what you can do, and most people probably don't realize at the beginning, is go to your inventory and deconstruct an item that you have created and put an augmentation on, and actually get that augmentation back to reuse. So we're looking at the crafted weapon that I made. At the bottom, you can see there's a deconstruct button. So if I go ahead and click on that and successfully deconstruct, it's going to say electrical conduits is something I'm going to get back. So guaranteed, if you do end up deconstructing an item, you don't like the augmentation on that specific item, you can get the augmentation back in your inventory and then go back to the research and development center and reuse it on another item. In the background, the footage you're seeing, I'm going to do just that. And I do realize that I'm making the same item. I'm wasting materials that I use to make that item, but this is a big thing. You can reuse augmentations. If you're not happy with how it works on a specific item, you can deconstruct and do that again. The big thing that you don't want to do is sell your items that you crafted and use an augmentation on, because I believe that means you just lose that copy and you'll have to find it out in the world again. So you definitely don't want to sell gear that you've crafted and put an augmentation on, unless you just really hate the augmentation and don't want to use it again, but I highly advise that you don't do that. Finally, there is a way to add a permanent augmentation slot to every single item that you can craft in the game, and I don't know if some people will consider this a spoiler, so if you're watching this video and you don't want anything, you should probably stop watching. But there's a way to upgrade this by using the cryopod points, which I believe you get by increasing the overall Andromeda viability. So this is in the operations center. You can go to this console and actually find the upgrade. I'm 12 hours into the game and I don't have this upgrade yet, but this adds an extra slot on all items. And so if you're really into augmentations, you want to take full advantage of the crafted weapons that you're making, you'll need to find it. Again, I'm 12 hours in and I don't have it, so I believe that's going to unlock after time. I wish I could say when that upgrade unlocks, but I just don't know. I haven't played far enough into the game, but once it does, that sounds like a very powerful upgrade. The ability to add an extra augmentation to every single item is super powerful. Anyways, guys, that's all of the information I have for augmentations, how to use them, and sort of the consequences, things to keep in mind when you're applying them to certain items. I think it's really cool that you can refund them. I was under the impression that they were super permanent and there wouldn't be a lot out in the world, and I have not found a ton of augmentations. I've found a few in the first 12 hours of the game, but I haven't been able to find, copies of ones that I've already researched because I haven't had enough experience. So maybe we'll have an advanced guide a little bit down the road with more things to keep in mind when you're actually using augmentations Augmentations. If you learned something new or just enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. And also don't forget that we've got a lot of tips and tricks guides, multiplayer, and my stream playthrough, again, continuing throughout launch week. Every single night we're going to be live streaming the game. So if you want to join me in my journey in Andromeda, be sure and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.